Hello, and welcome to the Motherhood Village podcast. I have a very special guest, Mrs. Shellee Howard, who is a certified independent college strategist and counselor. She helps middle and high school students, as well as their parents, by preparing them for the college admissions process, helping them create a standout strategy, get into their best fit college without going into debt, and even how to succeed once admitted. Shellee, thank you so much for coming onto my show. How are you doing today?
Outstanding. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Okay, so let's dive into my icebreaker round. What is your favorite book or one you would like to recommend?
It's an old one, so I don't even know if it's still in print, but it's called Do What You Love and the Money Will Come.
Mm, I think I've heard of that one actually. What are the values that guide you and your family?
Our core values. At our home, we are very in tune with our top three core values, and knowing each other's core values helps us to communicate.
Awesome. How has motherhood transformed you?
Oh my, that we could have a whole podcast on that. So I am an empty nester after 28 years this year.
Wow.
And so it has been a awesome ride. And I am super happy to be on this side as well.
That's great. And it takes a village to raise a child and to uplift a mother. Who and what has been a part of your motherhood village?
Wow. I'm so thankful I have had a village. My mom would probably
Mm,
be one of them. My two oldest children would play a huge part in that. And I think all of the families that I get to work with in College Ready have all brought great opportunities into my world.
that's awesome. A village is super important. And bonus question, what is your parenting superpower?
Listening.
It's a really important skill to have. I think, yeah, very important skill. I think a lot of times people say communication, but I think listening kind of trumps because you can communicate, but if that's not what they're even talking to you about or wanting that from you, then it's almost, it doesn't fit with it. So that's a great one. Okay, so let's dive into, I know you mentioned already College Ready. Why don't you talk a little bit about your inspiration behind becoming a college strategist and what exactly that is?
Absolutely. So it all started when my son came home from eighth grade and said, Mom, I know exactly what I want to do when I grow up.
Oh,
And I'm like, really? Because I know a lot of adults who still have no idea. And he says, Yeah, I want to be a brain surgeon. And I'm like, Of course you do, honey. That's just great. And off he goes to probably get something to eat. And then I remember having my heart racing, like, how can I possibly help my son accomplish such a large goal? And
mhm,
even if we did, how could I afford it?
sure.
Those were the first two questions. Like, I don't know. Without going into massive detail, because that would take way too long. The long story short is he was a child that did exactly what I recommended. And he did the hard work. So I don't want to take that away from him. But when he graduated, he had seven top tier colleges, ended up at Harvard, and graduated debt free. He is
Wow.
now an orthopedic surgeon at UCLA, and he was my inspiration. He was my firstborn and my guinea pig.
Wow. So let me ask, because I know you said you were like, okay, here he comes with these questions, but what did you find to then create your own program with College Ready to say, this is what it is? Was there trial and error? Did you then do it with your other children? Like, how did that work?
So the first step was I went back to school and I got my
Mm,
master's. After that, I got my certification as an independent college consultant, and I started touring 25 colleges a semester. So I really jumped in. I spent about 30 hours a week on top of my full time career and having two children. So education was by far the most important thing. Back then, 2008, there wasn't a lot of people doing
sure.
anything like what I do. And so I really was on my own, but College Ready is my seventh business I started. So the business part of it wasn't
Mhm.
the hard part. That was the easy part. The hard part was really figuring out how to get students into colleges and out
Mhm.
debt free. That was way harder than the business part. And so once I did it with my first, I like, well, maybe that was a fluke. Let's try it again. So number two, she had a totally different path and she got in and out debt free. And I'm like, we've got something here. And that's when I started helping
Hmm.
other families as just my giving to my community. And then I found myself loving it so much, I didn't want to do my regular work. And that's when it hit me that I really could lean all in and really make this something that was my passion that had a purpose.
And then what are the ways that you do support the students and parents? I know obviously you have the secret sauce of what you do, and someone who would come to you for your services, but what are some top ways that you really support the parents and the students on this road to college ready success?
So, parents are such an important part of this process. Some want to be really involved, and some just want to be like, here, you take them. So,
Yeah.
in supporting, it's really what the family wants and needs. So,
Mm-hmm.
what we do is we really focus on what does the student want?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to get them there? And what does the
Mm-hmm.
family need? Sometimes a
Mm,
family may never have talked about financial literacy. So the student may want to be a botanist and spend $80,000 a year on a college
sure.
education. We have to come in and help them see, is that the best plan for the student and their future? If so, we support it. If not, we give other opportunities. So, the how
Mm-hmm.
part of it is we have four different ways families work with us. We have a do it yourself program, which teaches one course on how to help your student find their passion and be an advocate for their purpose, which is we call the Passion with Purpose project. The other one is College Ready Debt Free, where we help families understand how to lower their expected family contribution, knowing what's on the FAFSA, what is not on the FAFSA, and understanding how to put their financial house in order. Then we bridge the two by helping them understand what is most important, the academic fit, the social fit, or the financial fit. Of
Sure.
course, we want it all, right? That's just how we are. But we have to prioritize. And then we
Mhm.
build a college list based on what the family and the students say they
Mhm.
want. And then we present it as here's your strategy of getting free, partial, and pay full price. Which one of these is going to be the best fit for you? And you would be surprised. I've had many families say, I'm happy to write a check, just get them in. And I've
Yeah.
had many families say, if you can't get them in for free, they're not going.
Gotcha.
So we help students from a 3.3 to all the way up. This year we have over a 5.0,
Wow.
students with a perfect SAT, ACT, students with these kids are, I just got to say, this generation, they're so smart, they're so driven, they're so intense, but they want everything yesterday. They're so used to that fast response that this process feels like a marathon.
Yeah, they think everything in life moves that way as their phone or whatever access they have, and that's not so.
Yeah, so meeting them where they're at and putting together a standout strategy of everything they need to do to get to the goal. And for us, the goal is
Sure.
not when they get into college, it's when they graduate from that college. Do they have a career? Do they know what focus? Will the alumni support them? What is the first job? We're thinking 5 years out. Will the career be done by a robot? These are real life things we have to be thinking for this generation.
Sure. I guess I should ask, how early do parents come to you with their children? I'm sure middle school, some people start prepping for that if there's high aspirations there.
Yeah. This is the number one question I get asked. And the reality is, for those who have children, and I'm guessing that's everybody on this podcast,
Yes.
look at your children individually. Child number one may be ready in seventh grade. Child number two may be ready in 10th grade. Child number three may
Mm-hmm.
be. So it's a maturity thing. Are they ready to start talking about their passions, their core values, the things that they're gifted and talented at? Or is that just
Yeah.
silliness to them? So I have
Mm-hmm.
students this year. I brought on two seventh graders who impress me more than I have some 10th graders. They're ready
Yeah.
to jump in with both feet and they want this desperately. So, in all reality, I've had people who are pregnant come to me and say, "What is a good strategy and a plan?" And I just let them know, read, 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 and read to your children as much as
Hmm.
possible, and then let them read to you, because that gift of reading will send the message that learning is fun. And that I have
Yes.
watched time and time again be the simplest path to success.
That's so poignant. And yeah, actually, I didn't even think about that because, yeah, I mean, my husband and I, we have the 501c account that we opened up for our son, right? With the thought process of college in mind. So truthfully, I'm sure some people are, or yeah, even thinking about it now. I'm a firm believer that, yes, it's following your child's passions. And I think nowadays, whether it's a trade school option or if it's a formal college education, you have to really go with what works. Because I know some people. I mean, look, it's the proof is in the pudding. We have some of the most famous, successful people on the planet that did not go to college. I did. I graduated. So I just think there's opportunity there. But I think to your point, there's much more information and people like you who can really be there and help along the way and say, look, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be hard, and you don't have to go broke. So along those lines, can you share some tips on how children can go to college without losing their mind, and parents can send them there without losing a lot of money?
So, the number one thing is planning. Just like you could do your own taxes on the very last day before they're due, or you get them to a CPA early. Which one's going to be
Mm,
less stressful? Think about when you go
sure.
and buy a house. You don't wake up one day and go, today's the day we're going to go buy a new house. No, you save, you plan, you strategize.
Sure.
Think about the
Sure.
effort you put into buying a new car. You don't just wake up and go to buy a car, right? But for some
Hmm.
reason, people do not want to, or don't think to, or for whatever reason, they may not be planning, or they think, well, back in my day, we didn't talk about this until the end of the junior year.
Yeah.
Well, back
Yeah.
in my day, we applied to 2 schools and didn't take a test. Like, it
Yeah.
is so incredibly different. So, the number one thing you
Sure.
can do if you don't want to go into debt and you want your child to go where they want, you map it out, you strategize it. When we bring on students, we plan their whole 4 years of academia. Why? Because there's
Mm,
some universities that if you haven't taken the right class before you apply, you cannot even get in. Well, that's
yeah.
not what high schools are sharing. They're trying to get you to
Hmm.
graduate high school. So there's this huge
Hmm.
cross path of missing information. And so when you start early and you start really leaning into what do we need to do, because the FAFSA looks at the second semester of the sophomore year and the first semester of the junior year. So if you wait till the end of the junior year, you just left your financial house in a mess.
Sure.
And the reality is, I get juniors and seniors all the time, and I do everything I can to get them caught up as fast as possible.
Hmm.
But it's so much easier when we start them earlier. And so that's
Sure.
why we started offering this program as an all inclusive from the time you start high school until you leave for college. That's the all inclusive college ready plan. And that's the same plan that got our students $17.6 million in scholarships over the last 2 years. So planning is the
Wow.
key to success.
Which would make sense. And then when it comes to colleges, and I'm sure there's so many variables, so many factors that go into that, but what really matters in picking the right college, whether academically, socially, and financially, to then, to your point, it's not this overwhelming, frustrative process. What can you share, like the top things in now your experience going on with this for so many years, that you can share with my listeners?
The first thing you want to look at to see if it is a good fit for your student is, do they have their top 3 majors? Because the student may say,
Mm,
oh, I want to be an engineer. well, do they want to be a chemical engineer? Do they want to be in
Sure.
aerospace? So if you pick a school that does not have their major, that is not a good pick, and they may have to transfer, which costs time and money and emotional distress. So when you pick academically, you want to look at that student's top three majors. You want to look at, does that school offer a solid program? Some schools have a theory based program where you learn the theory of
Mhm.
engineering. Some have a practical where you learn how to build stuff. Well, you may have a child that likes one or the other, but if you pick the wrong school, their education could be very, very wrong. And so
Sure.
academically, that's important. The other thing is, if you have a good student with a high GPA, they're used to being at the top of their class. If you want them to be at a highly ranked competitive college, now they're all just like them. I remember my son
Mhm.
calling me after the first week at Harvard, and he's like, Mom, you're not going to believe it. And I'm like, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, there's 12 students in my English class, and the teacher said one of us is getting an A. And he goes, you know what? I'm getting a B. It's okay. And he was okay with it. But it was his first B in his entire life. So again, the academic fit can and do they want to be in the most competitive environment? Because if they want to go on to get their MBA, PhD law, they have to graduate at the top of their class. So think
Mhm.
about if they're at a rigorous undergrad school and then grad school, like it could be pretty intense. So making sure that
Sure.
that student has the strength, the ability, the determination, and the desire to put it all together to make it a good fit. And then we talk
Mhm.
about the social fit. Some parents will say, well, what about community college? And then going from that position. And, back in the day, that was a really viable option. Right now in California, which is where I live, 6% of community college students graduate with a 4-year degree. That's a tragedy
Mm.
because what happens is they get a job and then they buy a car and then they move out and then they meet somebody special, and then the idea of being poor and going back to school sounds really not very nice. And so
Yeah.
you want to think about socially, who do you want your student to be spending their time with? And then you get into financially. Does your family want to, incur the cost of college? Do they want to get scholarships? What is their financial plan? Those are the things that should be spoken about in the home way before they apply to college.
I would imagine, and I think it goes back to me saying how early, and I think my son, I'm very new to the parenting game. My son will be 5 in November, right? But it's, now we have school choice. I live in South Florida. We have school choice, and there's the lottery for the charter schools, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember, just myself, and it was like you went to the school that was in your district and that was it. Thankfully, we had pretty good school, so it was fine. Now, because there's so many more students, there's so many more schools, it's a bit overwhelming. I mean, I think
Hmm.
in my city alone, there's like 8 or 10 elementary schools. Like it's kind of crazy to choose from. So long story short, I'm in the Facebook groups and I see, what elementary school this. So my son is just in VPK. We've been compiling a list, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. But to your point though, because then we look at schools that have trajectory from elementary to high school, and one of those schools, and it's a very expensive school, but they have access, they have like college prep stuff. So we're like, okay, do we think about that now? Because our son, I think, is going to be a bit advanced. Well, actually, we know he is because they did a VPK assessment. I don't know what that level means or where that will take him, college or not. But I know he has, I guess I should say, the capability. I say all of this to say it goes back to your point of how early and really how truthful that planning is, because I even know for myself, and wishing there was something like this, or I knew something like this back when I graduated high school in 2002, is I thought I had it figured out, but I didn't to a certain extent. So I guess I will. transition this into a question to say, someone like me who thought I had it figured out of what I wanted to do. I think I changed my major like 3 times, unsure. If there's someone that comes to you that's like, look, I want to go to college, but I am unsure of what I want to do. I was one of those people that worked full time. Thankfully, I stuck with it and finished my bachelor's, but I always had great jobs in the field that I ended up getting my degree in. So how would you help someone like that who's like, I don't know what I want to do, but I do want to go to college?
Mm-hmm. I would say that's probably 80% of the students who call me.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I think it's quite interesting. Most people think students know, and the reality
Yeah.
is 80% don't have a clue. But think about the
Yeah.
world they live in. They're on Instagram, Snapchat, all of, TikTok, all of this social
TikTok.
media. And then they're on a computer on Zoom and doing gaming or whatever. And so the question is, how would they know? Back
Yeah.
in the day,
That's
right? People would be out on the streets until the lights turned on, and we would be on our bikes and our skateboards, and you knew you were
true.
either fast or slow, like you just knew. And so
Yes.
if your parents, right? If your parents don't do what you want to do, how else are you exposed to what you do want to do?
Yeah.
There's no more wood shop,
Sure.
metal shop, that they've taken away the home ec. So now what
Yeah.
we do with our students to help them figure this out is we help them put together a passion with purpose project. What we have found is
Mm.
when you are serving your community, you feel that you're willing to try things that maybe you've never tried before because they're better than they would have been. So teenagers
Mhm.
are willing to be a little more risky and be okay with failing when they're serving. And so we help them to figure out, who do you want to serve? What do you want to change about their
Mm.
life? And how are you going to do this? And what they figure out
Mhm.
is, I don't want a desk job. I don't want a lab job. I don't even want to work with people. I want to work with animals. They start to get this pendulum swinging back and forth of, I really like this. I really don't like that. How valuable is that for them to
Sure.
then know, I want to be a blank, blank, blank? So that is how we help these kids. And just think of what life would be like if every 18-year-old did at least 200 service hours before they graduated high school.
Yes, 100%. I know for me, service has played a humongous part in just me. I mean, since I was young, and I totally, totally agree with that. And it's actually, I know in Florida we have that, but you're basically saying not every state has that, right? I know Florida does, like you have to do hours in order to graduate. But I guess to your point, maybe not every district or every state or every whatever has that,
Mhm.
which is service for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a school by school situation. And it's not even private public thing. It really isn't. It
Yeah.
is a district mandate, and some schools don't have any
Just,
at all. Some
wow.
schools have 5. But I will tell
Yeah.
you, the lessons these children learn, especially serving next to their parent and seeing the joy that's being brought, and the parent going, wow, you are really good at that, is
Yeah.
so mind opening to what they could possibly do with that gift that they are just wired for. It's not even that they had to work hard at it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess going back to what you were saying now, that yeah, there is a difference of, yeah, back in the day, and even me growing up, I remember riding my bike in the neighborhood and doing all of that. Now it's not the same. It's just not, right? Where it's very different. I guess, what do you think, or have you already seen in any of where you're at now with College Ready, is the future of college applicants and college graduates? Where do you think that lies? Are you still seeing people like very much so? I mean, I know earlier in your statement you said that, this generation, they're ready, they want to do it. I am curious, like what is that? Do you see the numbers rising with what you have with College Ready? Like what does that look like? Because, you have the, I want to be an influencer, I want to be a YouTube star, which is truly a thing. There are people who do that. You have DoorDash, that people make a living off of that. Like there's a lot of opportunity. So speak on that, of what you've seen and what you think.
Yeah. So if you think about the world ahead of us, if you want to be a CPA, a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, there is no other
Mhm.
option. You must have a
Yeah,
college degree. So those
for
will
sure.
always be, right? You just can't possibly do it when you're 18. Like you just need more
Yeah.
training.
Yes,
For
yes.
the people who maybe are not sure, for the people like myself, an entrepreneur, did I need a college degree? I don't know. Did it help
Mhm.
me? 1,000%. Because just because you
Yeah.
have an idea to start a business doesn't mean you market well, you finance. No, I mean, there's so much
You got
to.
to sell it. You got to learn how to sell it. You have to have the skill sets to sell it, to scale it. What does that look like? 100%. Yeah.
So if you're an entrepreneur, you can either make mistakes on your own dollar, or you can go to
Mm.
college and skip that whole mistake problem.
And have
And
the
so
foundation.
yeah, and it's at 4 years you need to grow up. I mean, not everybody is ready to be in the limelight when they're 16, 17, 18 years old. Some of them implode. Look at some of our actors and actresses. Like it is not as easy as they make it look. And so
Hmm.
helping students understand it is okay if you don't want to go to college. My question is, then what? So you're
Hmm.
18, you've determined you don't want to go to college. Now tell me, what are you going to do?
What is the plan?
And that's when they're
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? I'm just going to be like on social media and da da da. And, and that's okay. There's some people who will do that, and I'm not downplaying it. But the first thing I ask them is, where's your business plan? Show
Hmm.
me that it's not just a really cool idea that you have. Show me how you're going to take it from idea to dollars, because dollars is what you
Hmm.
need to live on your own. And that whole thing opens up a can of worms like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, it costs money. And they're like, what do you mean? And so there's this huge financial barrier that they're not getting by the time they
Hmm.
graduate from high school. They see these influencers doing something, but we don't know if they're in the basement or if they're on a yacht. Like, we don't understand what their lifestyle is. And I want students to understand, do you want a new car every year? Or do you care less and you'll happy to drive the same car? It doesn't matter to me, but need to be able to understand what that means financially to their future. So I never tell a
100%.
student, no, I never say that's impossible. I never say that's a stupid idea. I'm like, great. How are we going to do it? And then
For sure.
that's when
And
it's
it,
like, ah.
the light bulb, as we wind down here, I guess, yeah. I mean, you said you've had 7 businesses, which is wow. And, to the point of that, I think a lot of times it is glorified, but a lot of that, even the influencer side of things, some of the ones that are really big name, it takes work. And I'm sure, as someone yourself who's a business owner, that now we're marketing in the social media, social marketing day and age, I know even for myself, I'm putting a summit together and I'm like, wait a minute, yeah, I have this great idea, and yeah, I have a large community here, but that doesn't transition to dollar sales just because you have a great idea and you have a good community. I
Mhm.
had to do the work. And not that I didn't know that, but I say all that to say is, I think, and that's me, and I'm going to be 40 years old. A lot of times, to your point, is like, yeah, I think people have this, and the young generation, to your point, that might have that ideology, like, well, I'll start a business. Yeah, that's great. But you know how much work you really have to have. And it still goes to your point of having that, and I forget what you called it, but like, who do you want to serve? What do you like to serve? Because truthfully, if I did not have the passion that I have for helping mothers and what I want to do, I would have left this a long time ago, which is now why I understand the successful entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever you want to call it, say make sure you really love what you do. Because I went from corporate of working XYZ and making this to now I'm working almost 24 hours. It's a different thing. So the grind is different. So I think a lot of times there's this glorified thing that, yeah, we see it, but all of it is a lot of work putting the reels together. That's still a job,
Mhm.
you know? But to your point, okay, well, how are you going to make the money? Where are you going to get the sponsorships? Who's going to do this? What are you going to do to get that? You're not just posting, you know? So I'm glad that you said that for anyone listening out there, and even for the parents of saying, no, support that idea in the sense of, okay, sounds great, but now let's make a plan for it. What does that look like?
Mhm.
And then still having your passion behind it of who you want to serve in doing that. What is your message that you want to put out there? Because truthfully, I think it's all saturated. Even, you know, it's like something, you have the influencer thing. Now everyone's an influencer. So now how are you going to set yourself apart from the competition, right? So it's all work and still goes. So to your point, I think that's where the college foundation can come in. And like you said, if there's an option you learn there of planning, of building, of creating, are then transferable to your business and whatever you have there. So I want to ask you, before I dive into kind of some questions about you personally regarding just like being a business owner, what do colleges look for, and how can parents help their children stand out amongst the crowd?
So it's individual, but the foundation is grade point
Mm-hmm.
average with rigor. So not all easy A's, but some challenging classes,
Mm-hmm.
test scores, community service, leadership, extracurricular, letters of recommendation, and
Mm-hmm.
essays.
Yeah,
That's the
and
rule
that's
book.
to the point. And you're saying basically you hit those or check those boxes, it's a higher chance you get into the school you want, you
Mhm.
get the scholarships, everything that comes with it. And then you help parents basically hit those
Right.
marks, writing essays and all of the things that come with that.
Yeah, because I mean, unless somebody has an extra 20 or 30 hours a week to do this, and their child will listen to them and do what they ask. I've had people hire me just to handle that part of it. So they love their child when they leave. But, tongue in cheek, it is a lot. And they're going to question a
Yes.
parent, like, how do you know? Like, what makes what you say? Because Johnny's mom said this, or Susie's aunt said this. And that's the challenge. You can Google it, but how do you even know if the
Yeah,
person who wrote on Google is giving you the right advice? So that is the struggle in helping families get clear on this. The media wants you to believe college is hard to get into and it's very expensive. I'm here to tell you
well, yeah,
there is a boatload of colleges that are amazing and that you can go without having to go in debt.
sure.
So it's my message and my mission is to help families understand if we want our children to be successful adults, why don't we start now helping them to be the best version of them, which is their grades, their test scores, community service, leadership. So we're not doing this for college. We're doing this to have great adults. I always say, as an empty nester, people are like, aren't you sad? I'm like, no, I would be sad if my
Mm-hmm.
child was on my couch doing drugs. I would be really sad. And
Or not having direction, or feeling lost, or not knowing what they want to do, or what that purpose looks like in a um um oh goodness, I just lost the word. But yes, exactly, of not figuring out what they want to do.
right. And so for me, empty nesting means that they're ready, that I've done my mommy job and that they're going to be okay. And that brings me such
Oh,
joy. Do I miss them? Of course I miss them. They're my babies, but I love watching them adult. It's such a cool place. And I'm not a grandma yet, but I've heard that's pretty awesome too.
yes, my parents, they love it. My dad always tells me all the time, he's like, I wish you would have started earlier. And then I had him at 34, 35, and I'm like, look, Dad, this is the way it worked. And he's like, oh, but I get it. I'm sure I understand of like, goodness, I would, he's like, I'm getting older, and you think of all of that. But I love that you have that attitude, and I can see you have a passion for this. It's actually one of the reasons why I did want to speak with you, because I was intrigued by this conversation. And I am a firm believer. It's why I started my podcast a few years ago, that education, no pun intended, because we're talking about college here, but education in general, and support for mothers, for families, is really the foundation for everything. The more you
Mhm.
know, you just do better in an instinctual way. So I am very thankful that I have you on to then help moms, that someone can hear this, that maybe didn't even think about this, or maybe they did think that college wasn't still on the radar, or that college might be expensive because everything else is rising, but knowing that there is someone out there like yourself who can support them along that path. So let's pivot just a little bit here. So you're a busy lady. I know now you're an empty nester, but you're running a business. What are some ways that you release, you reset, you recharge to make sure that you're at your best and that you can do all the things?
So for me, I've learned I'm actually a CEO for three companies. And so,
Wow.
one was not enough. So I had to have more. And I was the CEO of my house. And now, I've graduated from there. What I learned very early on is if I'm not good, I'm not good for any of it. And so I have a self care regimen where I go through, and unfortunately I have to check them off my list or I won't do them. And and I have to hold myself accountable. It's important to stretch. It's important if you like to meditate, if you like to work out, if you like to go for a walk on the beach. That time with yourself allows you to be better for everything else for the rest of the day.
For sure. And I want to ask too, being a mom and being a business owner, and it's funny, I answered a question. I was being interviewed. I did one of those online interviews and it was like work-life balance. And I've talked to some woman who hates that word. She thinks that there's no such thing as balance. And I'm like, I don't know if it's really balance or it's more just kind of like you're I guess it is balance, but one day you're here, one day you're not. Like it's always kind of there. How have you managed, especially to someone like me who's kind of new in the business owner game and being a mom, how did you manage all of that? I know for me, I think it's in seasons, and I've learned to just accept that.
Mhm.
I'm also a check off. I have my book here, carry it with me everywhere, but I just had to give myself grace and know I'm in seasons. And there's some moments where I just know I'm gonna stay up late and I might not make it for here, but when I can, I am. So talk to me a little bit about what that journey was like for you and what did you have to figure out along the way?
So I learned really early on that when my children watch me work, they're learning skills for
Mm,
life. And so I didn't hold any guilt. I really didn't. I thought
mm,
that them watching me, how I communicate with people, how I
sure.
handle myself ethically, how I make the choices. So that's number one is the grace part of it. I tried to be a stay at home mom for 6 months. I gave it everything I could. And those women on this call, God bless you, because wow, that was something. I tried my best because I thought that's what I was supposed to be as a mom. And what I found out is I was not being true to me. My purpose in this world is to help people. That brings me joy. So by stepping away from what brings me joy made me sad. And then I wasn't a happy mommy. So I ended
Yeah.
up running all the mommy and me groups, and I just was that natural person. I wanted to do and serve. And so what
Yeah.
I will say to you is because I've always done what I've loved, it never felt like work. And because I have never felt like I'm working, I don't look at it as I'm taking away from my family or my children. That the learning is watching and seeing how I adult and then watching how my
Yeah.
children now adult. And I just didn't have the guilt that just wasn't in my world, but I also had to be okay with not being perfect. And that has its challenges of itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think as moms, somehow, some way, and maybe that's not everybody's feeling with it, but because there are exceptions to the rules, but I think it's just something stamped at the minute we become moms, it's like this perfection thing. And now with social media, it's even
Hmm.
amplified, to want to do all the things. But thank you for sharing that. I think that's I think that's eloquently spoken and in a way that's great for moms to hear that are kind of on that mompreneur journey. And I know a lot of moms, I struggle with it, not all the time. I've learned to kind of, to your point, I love what I do. He sees what I do, and I say, this is what, I love doing, and I make it count when we are together. So thank you for that. So, how can my listeners connect with you? Where can they find you? When I post this, I will add in the show notes and I'll tag you on social media, but how can they find you? And then you can end this with final thoughts to the podcast world.
Excellent. So, I'd like to first give you and your listeners a gift, and that's my best selling book. It's how to send your students to
Oh,
college
yes, we didn't even talk about that. Yes, yes,
without
yes, go,
losing
go.
your mind or your money. This book was written as a bet to my son about getting in and graduating from Harvard debt free. When he crossed the stage and gave me his diploma, he says, "Mom, where's the book?" Ah, he totally remembered. I did not remember. So the book is something very
Wow,
special where I give the foundation of what needs to be done from basically fifth grade all the way through. To get that free book,
wow.
go to freebook.collegereadyplan, that's PLAN.com, and you can get a copy of that book. And that is an easy yes. The second thing is if you need my support or you think you might need my support, please go to collegereadyplan.com. It's our website. I have so many free resources. We're all over social media, every channel, every opportunity. Our goal is to give you everything you need to do this on your own. Now, some of you may be a busy working mom who says, oh, heck no, we can help you as well.
That's awesome. And then any final thoughts to the podcast world?
Absolutely. My final thought is enjoy every step and every stage. When you're doing bath time, be all in. Bath time goes so fast and it's such a wonderful, non distracted time. And I, out of all the things I miss, it's bath time and reading before bed. So just cherish those moments.
Yes, thank you so much, Shellee, for coming on, for sharing your story, for what you do, and continued blessings to you for Love and Light. This was great.
Thank you so much.